Hi, this is Jack Stanley, and I wanted to talk about technology. Technology is a very overused topic, or word, I should say. We have technologies of just about anything and everything you can think of. But the thing is, what exactly is technology? What do we call this magic thing called technology? Well, technology, first off and foremost, is advanced knowledge, it's advanced science, it's advanced manufacturing, it's advanced machinery, it's advanced thinking, advanced development, technology. And technology, of course, is a double-edged sword. Technologies that are invented and created can be used for good and can be used for evil. But I often think, when it comes to technologies, think of what technology has given us and think of what technology has taken away from us. Technology allows me to speak to you through this medium called the Internet. Now, I have lived long enough to remember when there was no such thing as an internet, to remember when there was no such thing as cable, to remember when television was 4 or 5 channels, and you had rabbit ears or an antenna on the roof, and usually the best way to get good reception was holding onto the wire with your hand. It's going back a long, long time ago. But nonetheless, at that time, we thought it was incredible technology. Today, we kind of look at it and giggle a little bit because it's old-fashioned, one might say. But let's think of things here. Let's think of technologies. Think about in military terms. Think how the military has changed. Think about submarines and spacecraft. And think about probes. And now we have something called drones. All of these various things are designed to help, but also they can be used in many different other ways. Technology has allowed many countries to push themselves onto other countries. Technology has allowed us to circle the globe through the air. All of this is relatively new, and I know that today when you talk to somebody who's 20 years old and you say relatively new, it's only 100 years old, they go, that's not new. Well, I have to tell you something. 100 years ago is not that long. In the true scheme of things, it's nothing. It's a drop of water in the pan of time. And think about this. Think about the airplane. Of course, the Wright brothers flew in 1903, at the end of 1903, but you could hardly call that controlled flight. That was an experiment. It wasn't for another 10 years, at least, before any kind of sense of a really well-operated flight would take place. It wasn't until the teens. Actually, a lot of that development came through World War I and the development of fighters and early bombers. Think about radio. It's relatively new, once again. The first sounds ever captured, or transmitted through sound, through space at least, more or less, was something called etheric force, which goes back to the 1870s with Thomas Edison. Marconi, of course, brings along wireless. Tesla brings along wireless. And then, of course, there's an explosion of various people involved in wireless. Other things, as we said, cable, television, flight, military matters, sound reproduction. And I think this general mass communication, which has allowed something called popular culture to really take off. I mean, think about today in television and various conversations and what people talk about. The Kardashians, I would imagine 10 years from now they won't know who the Kardashians are, perhaps. Um, as Andy Warhol once said, everybody wants their 15 minutes of fame. And, of course, the modern technology has afforded that. It also has its reverse feature that fame is very fleeting today. Popularity is very fleeting. There was a time that if you were famous for something, you spent your entire life being famous for it. Now, if you're famous for something, within a few more days, someone else is more famous for doing what you were famous for. And it's all forgotten. This is all part of technology. And if you think about it, it's really quite fascinating. And I can imagine historians in the future, taking a look at us in this time now, which is you might say, a gathering of all the various technologies. And we're making the most use of them. But also, as I have mentioned before, they're also making the most use of us because we are not thinking like we once did. That's one of the problems with technology, and that is that you can basically start to rely on the technology so much that you forget to be able to rely upon yourself and that wonderful device that's in between our ears. So think about technology. Think about how it's changed the world. And then think about how it's changed us. It's important to think of. And just think, I'd like to be a fly on the wall, perhaps, 500 years from now, and look at the world and see what we're doing, what we've become. See if we got any smarter. I kind of fear that we won't. I kind of fear that technology will advance and advance, and we will degrade and degrade, and we will regress, and eventually all of the various machines will be fantastic, but what will we be? We will be frightening pieces of humanity, looking far worse than we do today. I mean, if you think about it, look at the size of lots of people today. We're getting fatter because we're sitting on our asses on computers. Kids play games on the computer. They don't go outside and play kickball. Think about that. There's a lot to be said about it. Technology is hurting and helping us. In every way you look at it, always look at both sides. Kind of fascinating. So, just a little talk on this, and I thought I'd like to talk about how it affects us, changes us, and does things. Talk to you soon.